Hello, my name is Bernard Kaufman, and this is a sped up video of me blocking out DM-Hex. I did this in roughly 1 hour while I was waiting for my flight home from the Game Developers Conference, and I had a lot of success in last week's map blocking out the gameplay and recording it, so I figured that it would be a good exercise to do it again this week so I could really look at the brushwork. And DM-Hex started with me just taking a large single box brush and then using a subtractive brush to take out some of it and really just create a level of gameplay. The original map I had called for a sort of hexagonal pillar in the middle of the map with a platform players could run around and jump in at the top. And this week, I actually remembered to plan out the map vertically as well as horizontally. So I already had an idea of the height of the map and what the general shape of it would be like from the side. Here you can see I generally like to use orthographic views when I'm doing most of the actual blocking out. And the only time I really use perspective is for selecting brushes, so that I can select a brush and then edit its qualities in the orthographic view itself. You will occasionally notice me going into a first-person perspective with a gun in the hand and running around. This is me actually walking around, sort of getting a feel for the size of the map and making sure that whenever I jump from the second level to the first level, the player doesn't take damage. That would be quite frustrating. And this is something I definitely like to do with a lot of my levels while I'm actually constructing them. I always make sure every 5 or 10 minutes that I actually get in there and walk around just so that I can get a sense that, oh yes, everything is to scale. Things are not too odd. As you can see here, I am starting to block out the top of the tower in the middle, which is going to have a powerful power-up, and I put jump boots right there just so I can double check that yes, you can jump from there. And now I'm starting to block out some of the gameplay space on the corners of the second floor. This is a box that I use and then hollowed out with a subtractive brush to create some additional gameplay inside of it, basically just make it into a separate bunker from the rest of the map, which would be a good space for a weapon. And as you can see, I walked around and got a sense of how large the area actually was. And then with that information, I decided to sort of keep the general dimensions. Here's me blocking off a side area that is elevated. The goal of this area was to be able to wall run from one rooftop to another for more advanced players and putting some pretty powerful power-ups in there. This required me to do a little bit of testing and tweaking to make sure things got it right, but it was well worth the effort. Here's me walking around and testing to see if I can wall run. One of the things I realized this week was that the initial scale, well, I didn't even specify an initial scale. I drew it on a napkin at Game Developers Conference, so I didn't really have a sense of the actual scale. And this involved me actually having to change the overall dimensions of the space several times and change the heights of this space. I didn't originally plan to have a two-step ramp here, but it ended up just being necessary for the gameplay. So that's something I'll have to take into consideration for next week. And here's me actually testing the wall running to make sure that it works and just building some additional geometry around there. I put a pickup here just as a mental reminder, and then I started to run. Oh, and that brief clip was me putting on some YouTube music. I've really been listening to the Doom official soundtrack while I work. It really helps me jam out and get into a zone. It's something that I like to do when I'm in my personal projects, just put on headphones and really just jam out. When I'm on a team project and I'm in a design role and it's very important to communicate with other people, I rarely work with headphones, but since this is just something I'm doing in my spare time and I was in a pretty loud airport terminal while I was making this, I decided to just have to have headphones in. Here's me actually adjusting a ramp. It took a little while, and as you can see, I moved into a smaller scale and really started rotating things around and moving things just by only 1 centimeter at a time, just to make sure everything was nice and flush. That kind of additional attention to detail is very important to me when I'm working to block things out. People, even if it doesn't affect gameplay, people notice if there's a brush that is just sticking out by like half a meter or so. So I always try to take the time to make sure that that doesn't happen. even in these little 1 hour speed maps that I do in the beginning of a project. One thing I realized was that my flight was going to come soon, so I decided to just finish the actual geometry here, and then in another hour or so I would actually place all the pickups, place all the dedicated player spawns, texture the map, light the map, all those aesthetic and gameplay things which I didn't really have time to do, and I wanted to focus on just the core blackout phase at this point. And I'm starting to run out of time in this video, so I think we're going to cut it off here. Thank you very much for watching, and you can check out the rest of the posts on my portfolio for information.